Welcome back to another head-to-head. This one may be ruined by a slight bias here from Josh Wilkinson.
What bias? Why would there be bias?
Well, you know, we're going to be talking about the team that you currently play for.
Yes, I do.
League.
I'm a pro player, and I'm in the Overwatch League.
We are going to talk about the Florida Mayhem.
Great team, fantastic team. Love them.
Have they brought the Mayhem enough to have you strongly believe they are the second best team in North America?
Now, I know this is going to sound cheap and hollow coming from me, a paid shill for the Florida Mayhem. But they genuinely convinced me before I even knew that I was on the team, before I knew that I was even going to have this 1v1 with Yaki. And I've been saying for weeks, you can go back on Plat chat as well, I was saying for weeks that the Florida Mayhem were a genuine team, they were underrated.
You go back and edit those Plat chat episodes. You do voiceover dubs.
Now, I did not think they were going to be the second place team. I didn't think that was going to be the case. But I did think they had a shot of upsetting a team like Paris, of beating like the Gladiators or the Atlanta Reign or something like that, and placing pretty highly. I thought they might make it to semis. I didn't think that they would come out and just honestly demolish the Philadelphia Fusion as well. And the way in which they did it, to me, showcased a couple of things. One, that they have some amazing talent on that roster. There is no denying that Yaki is a freak beast. And
even if he loses to you in a 1v1.
He didn't lose to me. He absolutely shit on me in that 1v1, actually. He showboated and threw.
The rules say you won.
That's true. I did manage to get 5 kills. But he just pounded people on Tracer throughout this tournament at unbelievable levels of ownage. And then also when he was on the Echo, performed incredibly well. And BQB was also being able to go toe-to-toe with these other really strong, like Ashe, Widowmaker kind of players, and be able to, at times, completely outperform them. So this DPS lineup is very legit, especially on the heroes that they were able to play here. And they were really coordinated. The halts, pulse bombs, the tank line pushing forward. This team was well coached and like they had like a clear plan of what they wanted to do in every fight.
I'm still not sold that they're the second best team. And I would probably still say, like, give me Philly in that second spot. And look, I know it hurts because you play for them, right? But for whatever reason, I just don't really trust Chris in the main support role. Like, I think when you watch the match against the Shock, the tanks played up to par, the DPS played up to par. I think where they lose that game is the Violet Moth matchup with Gangnam Jin and Chris. Yeah. And I think as time goes on and we go through different metas, I just trust Philly more. Like Philly even playing pretty poorly, Philly gave them a good run in that series. Like, it was not a complete blowout. Like, Philly just played some dumb comps in that matchup.
They did, yeah. They played some dreadful compositions.
Right, but I feel like, though, from what we've seen from Philly with hero pools throughout the season, is that they've been able to weather a lot of different storms and be successful. They just were not able to get by what the Mayhem were throwing at them that one game. So do I hold that one game as, like, the holy grail of everything? Like, no, not really. I still think, like, by time season end, I think Philly could be better than Florida. And I'll even go as far to say that Paris adding Sparkle in could end up being better than Florida as time goes on.
All right. Yeah, you're smoking some hot shit there, especially if we don't know whether he's any good at Echo.
I've been hanging out with Bren.
I mean, what else would Sparkle even play? You've hopped on the Paris hype train here.
Me and Bren, we go from the Paris hype train to berating the Paris social media person to back onto the hype train. We're just riding it on. It's an amazing adventure. But
I think a lot of this debate comes down to whether you believe that Philly had a one-off bad game against the Florida Mayhem in the semifinals. Yeah. I'm inclined to say they didn't, but
really,
well, I think they did have a particularly bad game. But the reason that they had a bad game is not some one-off fluke. It's not a random part of luck. It comes down to bad preparation and an overly sloppy, player-focused playstyle, and I think those are always going to continue with the Philadelphia Fusion. They've never been a team that relies on having the most precise teamwork. They let their players run the hero picks quite a lot. They have faith in their players to make those decisions, which I think makes quite a lot of sense when it comes to hero pools. But it doesn't make that much sense when you know your opponent, you know what you're going up against, and you still come out running like Ash Widowmaker at the beginning. It's gonna hurt the Philadelphia Fusion, and this is gonna crop up again and again throughout the season in these big matches.
I don't think so. Like, I think like they've had so many games where they've played well. We're judging 17 weeks worth of play against one game where Yaki went fucking psycho mode on Tracer, just killing everybody.
Well, that wasn't just that one game. He went psycho mode the entire tournament.
Playoff. Yeah, he did it the whole playoff, and for whatever reason, nobody decided to try and stop him. But like, I just don't think that Philly can have that held against them that hard. Where to be honest, I think the discussion is really just like, do you like Philly in 2 and Florida in 3, or Florida in 2 and Philly in 3?
Sure,
I'm not really sure there's many other horses in the race.
Yeah, I mean, the only other people you could say were like Paris on another week, because Paris have been able to, take Philadelphia really close in previous games.
Right.
They've had a 3-2 win over them, a 3-2 loss to them, and then another 3-2 loss to them. So obviously Paris, when they play metas that they're comfortable with, are very close with the Philadelphia Fusion, even at their best of times. The Florida Mayhem, by the way, also pooed on the Paris Eternal in their most recent match. It was a while back now, but it's been a while coming, this Florida glow up, and they've only had the opportunity to play against bad teams. Now, as soon as they play against good teams, they absolutely whop the Atlanta Reign and the Philly Fusion.
We have seen in the past, like, once these teams, like, when these teams have the glow up and they start to like ascend, there's usually a part where they ascend and then they drop down a little bit, and then they kind of work their way back up, because now people are going to prepare for Florida, not like it's swooshes Florida with the palm trees. So they're going to prep for like a good Florida. Like, the people are going to start to take them way more serious and put more effort into those matches.
I'll tell you who needs to put more effort into the matches: the Philadelphia Fusion, because
they won like 1 loss.
Okay,
2 losses.
But playing the right heroes and prepping and putting in the work is part of what makes you a good team. And Philly had none of that. They didn't do any of that work. They just kind of winged it, and they flopped.
It was 1 game. What about all the other games?
Okay,
did they not prep and do good in those games? Are we just like,
they did pretty well.
One tournament? Are we like, oh yeah, regular other games don't matter, just the 1 game in the tournament matters?
Obviously, those other games do matter, but they're also their recent other games as well. In the tournament, they beat the Gladiators and the Titans, 2 teams that have, I mean, the Titans have been just dreadful, right? Let's be honest. They're playing on high ping.
Remember the Titans.
They're a brand new team, like whatever, okay? But let's shove them out the window. The Gladiators, though, have been playing very poorly recently. It's okay, they get the win over them. Otherwise, they've been playing just recent games like against Paris and Atlanta forever. This is their first time playing against Florida since week 2. So it's not like the Philadelphia Fusion have had games against the Shock where they've beaten them. They've not had games against recent Florida, except for the one where they lost. The Philadelphia Fusion have not had big matches up until this time for a while. Like, it's been quite a while since they had those big games against like good Atlanta and good Paris in the past. So this, I think, is other teams just catching up to them.
Yeah, and it may honestly, like, my opinion may come out of just still kind of the feelings of, bring the mayhem, right? Like, it's kind of like there's an adjustment period of where like a team that's been so crap for so long becomes good. You're like, well, I don't exactly trust it like yet. And that's kind of where I feel like I'm at. I've seen it once for a weekend, and they have started to play better in their regular season games, but I want to see it over the course of the whole second half of the regular season before I say they're better than a team like Philadelphia, who has a very strong roster. We've seen them win tons of regular season games so far, and they just lose one in the tournament, and then we just kind of write them off. I think that's where I am on it, because it would be an interesting time, to say the least, where if we had the Mayhem rule North America and the Dragons ruled the Pacific.
I mean, that would just be bonkers when you compare it to Overwatch League history. But,
talk about glow up.
And I don't think that the Mayhem are going to rule, but I think that at the moment, you should consider them the second best team. They were the second place seed coming into the tournament. They finished They finished in second. So the most recent 5 games, that means the most recent 5 games in the regular season were better than the most recent 5 games from Philly, right? That's what that literally means.
True,
then when they come to the tournament, they directly beat the Philadelphia Fusion.
Didn't we have a ton of teams tied for the same record near the top with like map differential coming down to it?
It was super close. Yeah, it was super close at the top. So actually the Mayhem and the Shock were tied at number 1 position, but because the Shock had the higher overall record, they took the number 1 seed. So what I mean though is that the Mayhem are probably not going to dominate North America, but and also in the future, I could see that this team ends up lagging a little bit behind. There are some metas, hypothetically, where they might not be as good as others. You know, metas where Chris has to play more Lucio.
Yeah, I think that's what I was going to say. I was like, I would be scared if we ever had some type of, I don't want to say dive because I don't want to, I don't want the people in the comments to get excited because dive's never coming back in the way that you envision it. But like, anything that involves like Lucio, Winston, Diva, I kind of would feel kind of weird about the Mayhem in compared to other teams.
Mayhem did directly beat the Philadelphia Fusion playing dive in that match as well. And they looked pretty good when they did it. For me, it comes down to like these Reinhardt Lucio comps, because that's where the Florida Mayhem have not been able to perform that well. These rush kind of compositions where they can't combo the Fate. Yeah, they can't combo up Fate's halts, but they also can't combo up his dives, and they end up just kind of having to... It's much more about keeping your entire team as a unit as you push backwards and forwards, and they don't seem to be as good as that.
Almost like that other match we had for a bit, where you were kind of clumped together and you played as a team and you played around the Reinhardt. I forgot what the name of that one was.
Yeah, it was some kind of animal, but I remember the Mayhem being really fucking bad at that.
Yeah, they're tragic. Yeah, I mean, look, I think a lot has to do with like how hero pools and stuff turns out second half of the year, how the metas evolve in time. And then also, like, you have to remember, like, it's such a drastic different game when we get into these playoff and tournament type scenarios where there's no hero pool.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the other thing as well, is that Mayhem have proven themselves in that scenario. So for... the more that we go throughout this season...
With the current balance they have.
True. But the more that we go throughout this season, the more playoff things we're going to be looking at. There's going to be a tournament every month, and the playoffs at the end of that tournament every month are going to be what's most important. Regular season matches, okay, they're all right, but placing highly in those tournaments, getting the extra wins from those tournaments, and being able to convert that to perform at the end of season playoffs. That's what this season is going to become about. And so if the Mayhem can perform in those big matches, as they've just shown they can in the May tournament, they're going to do very well.
With the way you're speaking, we're going to have to put #ad on this one. Josh is a firm believer in the Mayhem at number 2. I believe that there's another team out there, whether it be Philly or Paris with Sparkle, that could ascend to get to that number 2 spot. Let us know in the comments what you think. Do you think Florida has finally brought the Mayhem, or do you think Josh is just kind of trying to get some little bonus money on the side, maybe an extra week on that contract? Let us know, and stay tuned for more head-to-heads.